I know it's still the end of February, but I feel like as things are on thawing outside, I want to share an on thawing practice with us all today. So today's practice is inspired by the breath of joy. So if anybody knows about what the breath of joy is, it's a pranayama practice. We're not going to be doing breath of joy itself, but we're going to do movement patterns that are similar to it. So we're going to start out working with some myofascial components with the feet, mobilizing the ankles, the knees, and the hips. And then we're going to come upright and do some movement practices to kind of move some energy about, give us a little energy, warm us up a little bit. Sound good? All right. So you have your ball. So we're going to start in standing today. We're going to start in standing. We're going to start with our feet. So you come on to your mat surface. If for you, bringing your foot onto the ball feels unstable and you want some support around for balance, you can hold onto a chair. You can also stand by a wall or anything else just to give yourself support. Start on your favorite foot. It doesn't matter which foot you start on, but just start here. And you can imagine that whatever, we might all be working with different surfaces here. Some might have a little bit more squish to them than others. Some might have a little more density than others. But when you start to bring your foot onto the ball, I want you to move really slowly. Okay? So as you move from the front of your foot to the back of your foot, I want you to lean in only to the degree where it feels like you can still easily breathe. And I want you to notice that when you find those spots, notice if at any time you hold your breath. Also notice the opposite leg, if there's any locking out of that leg. And you can always pause into some of those little spaces and give like little rocking over those tender spots. We will all have them. If you ever struggle with plantar fasciitis or some tenderness in the bottom of your feet, take care of yourself. There's no need to cause yourself any pain here, right? I want this practice here today in the feet to be more about livening up, just creating some sensation in the bottom of your foot, and noticing how your breath responds to it. Also, when we think about connective tissue in the feet, it's going to be connected with the rest of our leg, right? It's not just the tissues in our feet. So if you ever notice you've got some discomfort or some pain or anything going on in your hips, working with the feet is a great way to also create space along that line. Because here with the bottom of the feet, we're talking about the posterior chain of the body. But when we're finding those myofascial components, slow is the way to go. Yeah? You might notice how it's different if you trace in and roll around the inside of your foot. There's always oftentimes a little thickness around the arch, right? Back towards the heel, and what it's like to go down the middle of the foot. On the outside of your foot. Now, as you're here on the ball, and again, we might be all on different feet, that's okay. I want you to find one of those spots that maybe feels a little thicker or it feels a little bit more tender. Okay? But again, only to the point where you still feel like you can breathe, that you can still stay present with it, and there's nothing that feels painful about the experience. Now, I want you to pause there. And what I want you to do there is I want you to lift your toes. Like lift your toes like they're coming towards your shin. Okay? And then I want you to curl your toes while you're holding that spot. So now you're giving yourself your own active range through the muscle. Again, lift your toes up towards your shin. You can even feel a little spread through your feet. And then curl your toes out a little, gripping a little tight. Hi, Linda. You're going to need a ball of some sort, a tennis ball, a myofascial ball. If you don't have a ball, you could use the corner of a yoga block. It's not quite the same, but it could work. You could also use a water bottle. If even a water bottle or some of those other surfaces are too intense, sometimes you can just roll up the edge of the mat. Okay, and then roll up the whole surface along the bottom of your foot again. Remember, slow is the way to go here. through and notice that when you roll through your foot, yeah, you can let your whole hip move. And then find one more spot that maybe feels a little tender. Different spot. If you have more than one, usually there's never a shortage. There's never a shortage. And again, once you pause in that spot, again, lift your toes up towards your shin, and then curl your toes under. Ooh, that spot's harder for me. That's okay if that's for you too. Feel what that's like to move your toes, moving and ranging the muscles and how they shorten and lengthen by moving our toes. And then roll out your whole foot again. That's it. That's it. So wherever you're at, kind of feel like you get the whole foot. And if there's any spots where you feel like you kind of want to get a little bit more in there, take your time, do what you need to do before we switch to the other side. So again, sometimes balancing on one foot is different than the other. So again, you can always hold onto a chair, you can always hold onto a wall, any other surface, and then start out easy. Remember, slow is the name of the game with myofascial work. And just notice how it feels different on the inside of your foot versus the middle of the foot, the outside of your foot. And you get to grade how much pressure you add, right? So depending on your feet and your experience, right, you might have a lighter touch on the ball. Some of you might really lean into it. It just depends on you, and you get to moderate that. You get to decide on what makes the most sense for you. And for a moment, tune into the foot that you had just rolled out, because it's now balancing you on the floor. Just notice what it's like in that foot. So now you kind of have a sense of what's going on in the bottom of this foot. I want you to find a spot that maybe feels different. Maybe it's thicker, maybe you feel that there's a little bit more intensity with sensation there. Pause, and again, you get to decide how much you lean in or how much you back away from it, and then lift your toes towards your shin. And then curl your toes under. Yeah, lift your toes up. The whole time you're still on the ball, you're just moving your toes. And then roll out your whole foot again. Anybody else feel like you get like a cramp when you do that? It's just my spot. But in order to really think about how we make changes in the body and how our tissues are holding themselves, yes, we can add this passive movement into our muscles, but really where the change happens is that when we create space in the feet or another tissue, if it's legs or hips, but then how is it that we move them? How is it then that we create that neural connection between our muscles and our nervous system to say, now this is what we're going to do with that changed input in our body? So find one more spot. So there's usually not a shortage of spots in the feet. Okay, pause, and then lift your toes and curl your toes. Lift your toes, curl your toes, lift your toes, and curl your toes. And then roll out your whole foot again. Moment there, so feel like you get the inside, the back, the outside, the center, all of the spots there. And then come away from the ball, stand on your own feet here, and feel what it's like to get connected in your feet. Okay. Notice the sensation in your feet. You might notice the sensation between your knees and your ankles, from your knees to your hips. Just notice. Yeah, just give yourself a moment there. And then we're going to find our way down onto the ground. We are going to use our ball for one more thing once we come back up into standing. So for now, just set it off out of the way. Come all the way down to the ground. So as you come down to the ground, now we're going to start to work our way up, and we're going to find some spaces here with the hips. So take a block. You could also use a pillow for this shape as well. Now we're gonna lay on our side to start. I'm gonna start on my right side so I can face you. And I have 2 blocks here, and I'm gonna put one of those blocks underneath my head to keep my neck neutral. Now, you don't have to do that. You could also prop your head up or lay your head on your shoulder or on your arm too. Totally up to you. But if keeping your spine in neutral is something that feels really supportive for you, then a block works really, really great for that. Take your other block and place it between your knees. So you place it between your knees. What that's going to do is just give you some space here. And notice here how your feet are not touching. Your top foot is away from your bottom foot. Okay. Now, think about how the bottom leg or the top leg here, how you can lift the outside of that foot up towards the ceiling. Now, when you do that, notice if you go into shortening your left side waist. Okay? Can you still keep your waist mostly the same as you lift your leg up? So this is internal rotation of your top thigh. Okay? And then bring that leg down, squeeze the block. And then do it again. Bring your leg into internal rotation, so you're rotating the thigh inward towards the midline. And what happens is then the top foot, if you're on another side than I am, is away from you. And then bring it down. Squeeze the block. Lift the outside of the foot up by rotating inward at your top thigh. Lower. Do 2 more times. Stay anchored in the side of your body that's here on the ground, so that we're really just putting the work into what that top leg is doing. Notice what's going on in your side body there, and you do that. The temptation is to want to shorten it. So thinking about that, we're lifting the foot higher by shortening the side of the waist. So instead I want you to keep the side of your waist long, put the work into your hip instead. Awesome. Bring that leg down. Now, take your block out of the way. Just set it off to the side for now. Now I want you to lift your whole hip, so your knee is going to lift up with your leg out to the side or up towards the ceiling. Okay. Now you're going to wrap your thigh inward, so your knee is going to come forward and your foot's going to go back behind you. As you bring your foot back behind you, now sweep your leg forward and you breathe in slow. Draw your knee in towards your belly, and then lift your whole leg up towards the ceiling. Rotate your thigh inward, so your foot goes up, knee comes inward, and then reach back. You might feel that on the outside of your butt cheek. When your leg feels like it's more neutral, back behind you, bring your leg forward and towards your belly. One more time to open up your hip. Knee downward by rotating at your thigh. Foot goes up and then back, and then pull it through. Draw towards your belly, and then go the other way. So now you're going to take your leg back behind you, open up your knee so your foot goes down, knee goes up, and draw your knee toward your shoulder, and then back through the center. You got it, you got it. Reach it back, open your knee up towards the ceiling, foot goes down, lift your knee towards your shoulder to your degree. This movement can be much smaller than mine is. Move in a way where your hip, just exploring those spaces. Reach it back behind you, knee goes up, foot goes down. Last time. Bring your knee towards your shoulder in that direction anyway is all. And then back through and pause. Just let your left or your top leg, so if we're on different legs, it's okay. Bring your top leg just to rest. One moment there. And then you could just simply roll to your other side, but if it's helpful to continue to be able to see me, you might sit up and then find your way to your other side. Okay, I'm just gonna do the same thing on the other side. So I can see you, I'm gonna sit up and adjust. Again, you could be propping your head up, your head can be on a block, or your arm could be rested underneath your head. Take your block between your knees so your feet are floating here a little bit, squeeze the block. You're wrapping your top thigh inward, and then that, by nature of the movement, is going to lift the outside of your foot up towards the ceiling. Squeeze the block, lower your foot, And then again, wrapping inward to lift your foot up. Bring it down, squeeze the block. Wrapping inward, internal rotation to lift your foot out and away. Good. Lower it down, 2 more. And again, you notice where your leg, your hip socket here, how it moves without it going into your side waist. Okay. Which ultimately is about your spine moving your hip. And can you keep your spine neutral and just focus in on the hip? 1 more. 1 more time. And bring that leg down, squeeze the block. Lift your leg, take the block away. You're gonna lift your right knee up towards the ceiling. So you're squeezing the outside of your right glute. And then you're gonna reach your knee downwards. You're wrapping your thigh internally as you reach your top foot back. And then draw your top leg towards your belly. And then open your right knee out to up towards the ceiling. Yeah. And then wrap your knee inward as your foot goes back. Pull your leg through. Open the knee. Wrap your thigh inward, foot goes back. And then pull it back through. Then we're going to switch directions. So first you're going to start by reaching back. And then open your knee towards the ceiling as your foot goes down. Pull your knee towards your shoulder and then zip it back in towards the middle. Now again, notice your breath here. Keep your breath moving in and steady on the out. Through here, abduction and adduction, internal rotation, external rotation. Last time, and you bring your knee up towards your shoulder in that direction anyway. Yeah, and then you let your top leg rest on top of your bottom leg, and if it feels better for you to bring your block between your legs here in this rest, you most certainly can. Let everything just settle, let it be. And use your top hand to bring yourself up. So as you bring yourself up, there's a couple different ways that we're going to set this up. So oftentimes the knee, when we think about the knee, and honor your knees and what your experience with your knees have been before, but oftentimes we think about the knee, we think it just hinges, right? But the knee also has the ability, so if you take your pointer fingers to the front of your shin, you can find your shin bone there. Take your fingers just to the outside of that ridge. You feel that ridge there? And your thumbs can be back behind them. Now, if you take your hands and do your own articulation here, that's not very big. It's not very big. Let me see if I can get a little bit closer here so you can see me just a little bit closer here. And so if you turn your fingers, towards the center and then away, it's really, really subtle. It might only be a few degrees. Yeah, there's just a little quality of rotation. Now also notice that when you do this, how the hip wants to move. The hip really wants to rotate with it. You can just use your hands here to help articulate it. Now, if it works in your body, another way that you can do this to help minimize how much your hip is moving. So if you have your right leg here in front, take your right arm underneath your right leg. Now again, it's okay to stay just where you were just a moment ago. Or you can take your right arm underneath your right leg. Now take your right arm and find your left arm, just give a little squeeze. Okay? And then if you lean back, now your right foot's gonna float. Okay? This requires a lot of space in the front of the hip, right? Now you can continue this, but now what it's gonna allow you to do is if you squeeze your arms towards your body, you're gonna lock your hip in place, and now your hip can't do the work of what's supposed to be happening just below your knee. You could also take your top hand here and again, help mobilize it. And if that is not friendly, if that doesn't work in your body, right, you come back to this. Just as effective. Another moment. Now let's take this action that we just had. I'm going to come back into this space here. Now let's think about the ankle. So point your toes. Point your toes. Now, oh, let me say, if you were here, pointing your toes is tricky. So now I want you to maybe, so if you were here sticking with this, take your leg and bring your leg up on a block, so then you're able to move and articulate through your foot. Does that make sense? Okay. But if you were like this, stay just like here. So like so, holding your own leg, or prop your leg up on a block so you can do rotation with your ankle. So point your ankle, roll your big toe towards the middle, and then start to lift your toes up towards your center. And then draw your top of your foot towards your shin, and then turn to the right, and then point down. Ooh. No. You might start to feel there's a little cramp in the bottom of your foot. That is not abnormal. One more time in that direction. Once your toes go back into that point, you're gonna go the other way. So again, you could be holding your leg, what it looks like here. I'm gonna back up so you can see my foot. One more time in that direction. End with your toes pointing. Toes are a little bit like toys right now. And then pause, bounce down your foot, or if you're like this, right, bounce on your ankle. Okay. Now, let's just switch sides. So as you set this up here on the other leg, again, maybe you start with this idea that our knee, or just below our knee, has this ability for this little bit of rotation. For most of us to feel this for the first time, we feel it with our fingers. Even feeling with our fingers, this knee barely hardly moves. It's tricky. It's really, really subtle. Yeah, and notice how the hip wants to do the work there. Now, if that is for you, you stay right there, or if not, you're going to scoop your left arm underneath your left leg. Okay? And you're going to hold your left pit of your right elbow with your left arm, and then pull that arm in, and then you can lean back. And then here again, so what you're doing is you're locking the hip in place. These are called CARs, they're controlled articular rotations. So if you've ever heard of functional range conditioning, that's where this comes from. Feel out how that moves or how it doesn't move. It's okay. Settle in the middle, point your toes. Now again, if you were here, set your leg up on the block. Okay, point your toes. Roll your ankle, and again, there might be some of that quality of the knee here involved, absolutely. And then as you draw your toes up, trace them up towards the center, draw them towards your face. And then reach them away from you. And you'll notice here how maybe spreading the toes out naturally happens there. All right, one more time in that direction. End with pointing your toes, but then you pause and then go the other way. So lifting up from the pinky toe side of your foot, toes coming towards your shin. Yeah, so there's that articulation from the knee to the ankle. One more time in that direction. Again, slow. If I had more time, I would have you probably do these even slower. Your toes, bounce around your foot, bounce around your leg. So let it be loosey-goosey there for a moment. Now we're going to switch sides. I'm going to give you two options so that you can find a way that works best for you. Actually, I'm going to give you a third option so that we have a variety here that works for everybody. So we're going to switch back to the right foot being in front here. I'm going to show you this first one, and then I'll show you some other ways to do this. But now we're going to work on the ankle. So as you lean forward here, you can almost like you're having a seat on your bottom leg. Now you're going to know right away if that works. It does not work in your left knee. I'm going to give you some other options. I'm just talking through this one first. So as we lean in here, we're accenting here dorsiflexion. Okay? Wherever it is that we're going to land, I'm going to give you the two other options here how to do this so that you can find how this works in accessibility of your hip. But again, we're locking the hips, so we're going to put the work into the front of the ankle here. So this is position number one. Position number 2 is to bring your foot up on a block, more like a lunge, and then lean in from here. Okay? Let me just turn to the side. So both are going to include in having, now this back leg here, I opened it way up. Yeah, I brought it out to the sides. I'm even on the inside of my back foot here. So that's another way to come into it. Now let's say that neither of those are working on that back knee. What I want you to do instead, and you might want to take your block to a wall, is kind of like what we would do if we were stretching the back of our calf muscle on a step. You could use your block instead, okay? So then we alleviate any of that pressure on the back knee, okay? So any of those options. What we're going to do with the ankle is all going to be the same though, no matter which choice you find yourself in, okay? So lean into your right foot. So you're closing the space between the top of your right foot and your right shin. Now, at first, you might notice how your heel wants to lift. So reach your heel down. Stretch there in the back of your heel. Back of your Achilles here. But now, what we're going to do is I want you to imagine, now they're not actually going to go anywhere, but I want you to imagine you could lift your toes up towards your shin. Oh. You feel that in the front of your shin, the front of your ankle? Yeah? Okay, now notice when you do that, if you hold your breath, keep breathing. Keep breathing. So now it's a stretch plus an active range here. What's that? Another moment here. Hang on there. You got it. Anybody else's shin feeling really hot right now? Deidre says yes. Okay, and then come back out of it nice and slow. And then we're just going to switch sides. Again, your foot can be up on a block. Either way, take your right knee, open up your right hip. Yeah, give yourself space. Again, you can stand at a block, at a wall. You could even, I like using the block because of its softer surface than using a floorboard. If you have steps nearby, right? Steps work. Wherever you're at now, you're going to lean into your left foot here. Now notice when you lean in, when your heel wants to lift. I want you to see what you can do. Do your best to keep your heel on the ground. Which means for some, leaning back out of it. That's okay. That's okay. But now here's the real work. Imagine you could lift your toes towards your shin, or the top of your foot towards your shin. And that's going to shorten, yeah, this is your anterior tibialis coming to life. This muscle here, this action in the front of your shin, this is what's going to allow you to dorsiflex, so pick your foot up towards your shin. It can get really tight. We hold a lot of stress there. You don't even usually know it. Okay, keep trying to pull your toes towards your shin. You got it. One more moment here. And then bring yourself back. Find your way down onto your back. But maybe before you do, we're going to find our way onto back. Watch me first. Watch me first, because it's a tricky one to talk people through, so just seeing it sometimes is helpful. This next one we're going to do is going to be preparation for movement. So if you are someone who gets dizzy easily, you're going to give yourself more breaks with this one, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to use our heel bones. I'm going to lay down on the ground and use my heel bones to pump my feet. This is also really great for lymph drainage. We're going to create some movement, but it's also vestibular. We use this in vestibular work, so movement balance work. So if you tend to get dizzy easier, you're going to take more breaks in between. Okay, and I'm just going to show it to you. So as I come down onto the ground, your legs are going to be long. Now your legs don't have to be straight. For a lot of people, keeping a bend in the knees is helpful here. But all you're going to do is we're going to start out really slow, just pointing the toes and bringing the toes up. You can see how I rock on my tailbone and wrap on the back of my skull. Now you could also stay this slow and at this pace, move with your breath, easy on the inhale, easy on the exhale. But I'm also going to give you the option to speed it up. So it's more like, it'll feel almost like you're flicking your feet and it's going to look like this, okay? So when you pump your feet, you're going to get this rocky motion on the back of your tailbone or the back of your sacrum and the back of your head, okay? And naturally what's going to happen is there's going to be some lift and lower of your chin just from the natural rhythm. Some bodies, depending on how your body holds tension, some will move less than others, okay? And that's okay, that's okay. There's work that can be done there with that, but let's just see where it's at for now. We're going to start really slow. So come on down to your back and just start by pointing your toes and bringing the tops of your feet up towards your shins. Yep, that's it, Patricia. And notice your breath. Notice how your body responds to the movement through the chain of the movement by moving your ankles, how it changes, influences input at your pelvis, at your shoulders, around your rib cage, and the back of your head. Now you could stay at that slow pace or start to speed it up. And it can be your speed. The faster you pump your feet, the more vestibular input that you're going to get. So again, if you get dizzy easily, you're gonna pause. You're gonna just do fewer. You're gonna give yourself some breaks and allow your nervous system to process the information it just took. Notice your breath. Again, keep it easy. You do not have to match your breath with the movement. I want you just to imagine that your inhale and your exhale can match one another. We've already been doing this here for about 20 seconds or so, and you might start to feel how your shins are starting to get warm again. We've already been doing some shin work, ankle work. Okay. So just notice how that starts to warm up even more. Again, you can pause and take a break at any time. 5 more seconds. And then pause your feet. You can start by slowing them down. You don't have to just all of a sudden hit the brakes. You can slow it down and then pause. Let everything soften here and notice what you notice. What do you sense? Your muscles stay tight, or can they soften some? Your breath doing. Notice it, don't try to change it. What does the energy in your legs feel like? We're going to do it one more time. Okay? So again, you can start out really slow, or if that rhythm felt really natural for you, just go ahead and get started there again. Yeah, it's like creating a pump, right? You're creating a pump from your feet and articulating it throughout the rhythm of the rest of your body. If this quickened pace feels like your body's like running into a wall a little bit, then I want you to slow it down and just work with pointing your toes and bringing your feet up towards your shins. Slow it way down. Easy breath here, in and out. You might notice a little pause on the end of your exhale. Five more seconds. And then start to slow it down and pause. Notice the energy in your legs. Do you also notice it in your bum at all? Do you notice it in your belly? Maybe you notice a little tingling in your hands or your arms. Freeing up those spaces in which energy moves throughout us. Then start to bend your legs, Bring your feet up towards your pelvis here. Give yourself just a moment here before you roll to your side. Use your top hand, bring yourself up, and come onto your hands and your knees. Now, if being on your hands, because we haven't done any wrist warming up, you have your two blocks here. You can bring your forearms onto your blocks instead. You can be on the lowest height or the middle height even. Or bring your hands here down onto the floor. Keep your knees wide, curl under your toes. So your feet are going to be together and your knees are going to be wide here in this moment. Okay? Breathe in, rock your hips back towards your heels. So it doesn't have to go very far. Now lengthen the back of your neck. Your spine is staying neutral here. And on your exhale, push through the tops of your feet and rock yourself forward. And then when you breathe in, so it's nice and slow, moving with your pace. Imagine that when you reach your hips back, it's like loading a spring. And then pull yourself forward. So again, if you're on blocks, you could even interlace your fingers there. But when you reach back, then you're pressing down through your forearms and your elbows instead. But can you keep your spine neutral? Can you keep it long? And then you're expressing that spring by pushing through your feet and rocking your hips forward. Loading the spring on your inhale as you reach back. So the pace of the movement is matching your breath. That's why we're all going to be at different paces here. Imagine the spaces where your two sitting bones are. Your ischial-tuberosity is the bottom side of your pelvis. It's where your hamstrings insert. And it also has connections there and insertions with the pelvic floor. So you almost can imagine that when you inhale and your hips go back, almost like there's a spreading, there's a space in the bottom side of your pelvis. Here, imagine a space around where your pelvic floor is. And then when you push forward, there's a drawing together. Almost a little mula bandha work there, yeah? Reaching your hips back on your inhale, and then exhale, pulling yourself forward. If anybody's on social media, you have seen me do this on a ball before. I love doing this over a therapy ball or an exercise ball. One more time here. So wherever you're at, take your time, it's your pace. And then pull yourself forward. If you're on blocks, take your blocks away one at a time. Put your hands down on the ground. Walk your hands back. Your toes are curled under so you can lift up your knees and then come up into standing from there. Or find another way on up. Find your ball. You're going to bring your ball between your heels. Okay? You could also pick up the ball and bring it up a little bit if you place it just below your ankle bone, so it wouldn't quite be on the floor. Your toes are going to be facing forward here. I want you to squeeze the ball with your ankles. Okay? Spread out for your toes. You might even lift your toes, spread them out. And then rock forward into the ball mound of your feet. Maybe you lift your heels a little bit. Squeeze the block, or squeeze the ball. And yes, you could do this with a block between your knees instead as another option. The reason why we have the ball here and then lower your heels down is I want you to notice that when you rock forward, oftentimes what happens when we start to lift the heels up off of the ground is that we roll to the outsides of our feet, or we wrap our heels in, our ankles, do all sorts of creative things when we rock to the ball mound of the feet and lift the heels. So then you start to play with your own degree here of how much you lift your heels. And then when you bring your heels back down, I want you to lift your toes. I know. And then bring your toes back down, reach the ball mound of your foot, and that's enough. Right? Your heels never have to go anywhere, or they can start to imagine lifting up. I've played with this. It is possible if you don't have a ball to do this with a water bottle between your heels. Your heels come down, rock back a little bit. When you rock back, feel how the front of the body catches you. Okay. And then lean forward. And then rock it back. One more time. To your degree, maybe you give yourself a little challenge. Yeah, that's it. Keep the ball where it's at, and then lower your feet. Take the block out of the way. Bounce around in your legs here a little bit. You can just bounce on the ball mound of your feet. So your heels maybe get a little compression on the ground. Okay. Now, As we settle, I want you to take your arms at your sides. And for a moment, take your arms back. So Deidre, there's that little shoulder extension. This is as much of the arm work as we're gonna do today. Okay, that's it. I told you it's gonna be easy on the shoulders kind of day. Reach your arms back. Have your feet wide as your hips, maybe a little wider. Okay. And then when you breathe in, I want you to bring your arms out in front of you and hinge back at your hips. When you hinge at your hips, right, your knees are gonna bend. And then when you come with your arms back, lengthen your legs. Lift up through the crown of your head and lengthen your spine. You can reach your arms back. And notice when you reach your arms back, right, there's this little lean forward. Yeah. And then arms lift up, hinge at your hips, reach it back. And you can, remember how when we were down on the ground, I said just keep it moving to this degree, right? You could keep it nice and slow, just like this. Breathing in as your arms lift up. Hip bones reach back, just like we were doing on our hands and knees a second ago. Not a second ago, a few minutes ago. And then bring your hands at your sides as you lengthen your legs. You can decide how far back your hands go. Now, keep it at this pace. You could also deepen the hip hinge and start to lower more until it feels like a squat. But you don't have to. Yeah, you keep it your degree in your hips, right? And then bring yourself up as your arms sweep back. Now, you could also start to quicken the pace. So then you start to quicken your exhale a little bit. This might start to even go faster. You might start to feel like your heels want to start to lift up. And if they do, you could hop. Yeah. Your feet don't have to go very far. You land on the bottom end of your foot and your heel. Maybe the hops get a little bigger. Maybe the hinge gets a little deeper. Your pace. This could also be a big pace like this. Applying metrics, yeah? Yep. There is variation there. 5 more seconds. One more. Land, absorb that shock. Stand up tall. Let your hand come to your heart. Notice your breath. It's quickened some. Yeah. Heart rate variability, just as important as heart rate. Heart rate and breath rate variability, just as important as one another. And just as we want our heart rate and our breath rate to be able to adapt, right, and speed up, with that variability is also its ability to slow it back down. So by taking those moments to pause and listen to how your breath responds to that movement, you're teaching your nervous system to build resiliency in what it adapts to. Yeah. Notice the energy in your legs and your feet. Really grounded in your feet, I hope. Okay. And then let's do that same thing again, one more time. So when you stand and start in standing, let your arms come back. Your shoulder blades can even come together, almost like you're pushing into a wall back behind you. And then when you breathe in, let your arms drift up, hinge your hips back to any degree. And then when you exhale, arms go back, hips go forward. Inhale, keep your chest lifting, long in your spine, hinge at your hips, right? And then there's that ankle mobility work, and then breathe yourself up. So again, as you start to reach up, you might lift your heels. It could be to any degree. It can be little lifts, just like it could be little hinges or big hinges. You get to choose. And then you decide on your pace. If you need more warmth, you need more energy, you might think about pumping faster. Maybe you think about here for a moment to only move to where you can still breathe in through your nose, out through your nose. Maybe it turns into a hop. And think about that when you land, it's like shock absorbing in your hips, your knees, your feet as you load back. Landing and absorbing, yeah. Just to then express the energy again. Yep. 5 more seconds. And then land and pause. Yeah. Hand to your heart. Notice its quickened pace. Notice your breath. You can certainly hear mine. Yeah. You can sway a little side to side. Notice how when the exhale starts to naturally start to lengthen a bit. All right. Then we're going to find ourselves down onto the ground here in a seat. So find your way down the way that works for you. If you want to take a little forward fold in between, you can, or just go ahead and hinge. Come on back down. We're going to take our legs here out to the side. Bring your toes out. You've done this with me before. Many of you, this little bear sit here. Bring your hands back behind you. So you can even lean back a little bit here. And just create these little windshield wipers with your hips. Yeah. Now we're going to just slow the energy down. Let things settle a bit. Start to unwind here a little bit. You can always take your feet out further apart or closer together. Just notice what works for you. Again, you might still notice how things are still working on coming back down in the reset. The next time your knees go to the right, let them go all the way to the right. So lean onto your right hip. So you're gonna have a bend here in your right knee, and your back knee is down on the ground. Now you can adjust, add padding, blankets, blocks, a block underneath your right knee if you need. Absolutely anything you need to do there to support this seat. My left sitting bone is clearly way off the ground here. Probably most of ours are, okay? So take your hands wide and start to hinge over your right thigh. So it's like you're leading your chest over your right thigh. And you're only going to come down to your degree. And then push through your arms and bring yourself back up. And then hinge again, reach your chest forward. Go ahead, right, the back leg is just being the back leg right now, it's anchored. If you want a little bit more stretch in your back leg when you're here, you can walk your left knee, your left foot a little bit more to the right. So back and to the right. And then you're gonna get more of a stretch across your left hip. Just as an option. Next time you hinge, pause there. You could come on your forearms. If your blocks are nearby, you can bring your forearms onto your blocks. Go pigeon variation. But notice how we're not folding, we're not laying on our externally rotated leg. You can always stay up on long arms. I like to have my hands wide and feel like I was getting more space across my chest that way. I'm going to start to walk your hands back up. Take a peek here at your back leg. You can, if you can reach your back leg, you can even support it here. You can hold your own back shin here. I'm just going to turn so you can see what I'm doing here. And just pull your, so now I'm at my back ankle. Again, you can be at your back shin. Anywhere that you can connect here. And if that means bringing the hip a little forward in order to find it, you can. And then moving it back to the place where you're going to just take a little stretch here. Now hold your own ankle, your own shin. Draw your heel towards your seat. And then again, lean towards your right hip. Now, because we're all working with different mobility in our hips, you might take your left knee back behind you a little bit more. And then start to bring yourself back up. Let your back foot go. And then just switch sides. So go ahead, lean back. There's that bear seat. Shift the weight to the left. Both of your legs are in this 90-degree angle. Hands can go wide here. And then as you hinge over your left hip, your back hip is internally rotating, right? Your back hip there is in that internal rotation where it was early on in our time together. You can hinge and lift. And you can also stay with that rhythmic motion there. And as you hinge, you might feel how your back leg, the inside of your back leg, reaches down a little stronger. As time pause, you can come down your forearms. You can have your forearms on blocks. You can stay on long arms. And then the outside of your upper left leg, the outside of your left shin, and the inside of your back leg. Start to bring yourself up, nice and slow. Take a look at your back leg. And again, you can adjust your back leg. You can even bring it up closer towards you. So then there's your shin. You might reach down for your back ankle here, but then pull your heel towards your seat to any degree, again, honoring your knees. And you might, again, lean a little bit to the left and take your right leg back behind you a little bit. But then as you find your place, and you're holding your own back foot, but now retake your left side of your ribcage towards your left thigh and then hinge again. Yeah. Keep reaching your right knee back behind you. And you do a little wiggle of your hips side to side. Another moment there. Start to let your back foot go. Start to bring yourself up. Rock your knees back through the middle. Now this time, bring the soles of your feet together into the middle. Press the pinky toe sides of your feet and hold around your own shins. Now if you have blocks handy, you can bring them out in front of you and create a little spot for your forehead to land. You could also take your blocks and bring them under the outsides of your legs here. Hold on to the front of your own ankles or your shin bones and feel the lift up through your spine. And then when you exhale, you can hinge any degree, or you can stay vertical. And blocks are the space that is supportive. Create a little T there, so your forehead can come on down. Give a little space to rest. You keep reaching the pinky toe sides of your feet together, and then open through the arches of your feet. Like you're creating a little opening flower, and with the blocks you can see what I'm doing there. And I'm opening up through the arches of my feet. You're going to feel how the hips externally rotate a little bit more. Just it's like a little self-assist. And then very slowly take your time. Bring yourself up. One more forward fold, and then Shavasana. So as you lean back, bring your feet here out in front of you. Keep a bend in your knees maybe to start. Find the front edge of your Ischiotrubrasti, right, your sitting bones. And then when you fold, again, there's maybe blocks. You can create a T there for your forehead. But you can also stay on long arms as you hinge and fold. Turn to the side if anybody wants to see. So I'm rocking forward first. This is where blankets can also be really helpful to sit on a blanket. So that when you start from this slight bend in the knee, notice how you can feel the length of the posterior chain, the spaces that we were talking about in the beginning when we were working on our feet. So that when you lengthen, if you start to lengthen behind your knees, then you're getting the long line along the whole back line of your body, not just your hamstrings, not just your low back, not just the area between your shoulder blades, but we're aiming to feel the length and experience the length and space in the whole back line of the body. Take your sweet time. Bring yourself all the way up. And find your space for Shavasana. If you are near a wall, legs up the wall after practice like that would be amazingly juicy. I would recommend legs up the wall if you have access to that. If not, go ahead and lay all the way back on the floor or on your side if you'd like for Shavasana. So find a space for you. Add layers of clothing if you need. Allow your feet to go as wide as your mat, maybe even a little wider. And as you find space on the ground, again, maybe you notice any of the lingering energy. Sometimes it can feel like a tingle or a butterfly. Maybe just feel spacious or open. Or maybe there's more of a quality of feeling in being settled, but alive in your experience still, even in rest. To be mindful and aware and present as the body has now created the space to breathe itself. This balance between activation and settling, action and non-doing. Accessing our power, our agency, our resiliency. And even when the action itself settles, the energetic qualities of it still reside within. You choose to stay in Shavasana, stay in your mindful rest, intentional rest, for as long as you need or want. If it feels right for you to start to wiggle around and find yourself vertical, take your time and find your way on up. As you reorient back to vertical, becoming there. If you're staying, just stay. Yeah. Let your hands land somewhere on your body. Maybe your hands are at your heart, maybe your hands are in your lap. The length of the back of your neck and the energy up through the crown of your head. As you feel the reaching down and the anchor that is your pelvis. Honoring your precious life energy. As we feel alive in our own energy, we share that spirit, we share that beautiful, beautiful life force with others. Bring your hands here now into your heart. We'll share an Om together here as we close. Take a breath in. Om.